Okay, so one of the more complex parts of learning Spanish is the verbs. And I often hear people say that that's the hardest thing for them about learning Spanish as like a second language. We're going to start with the basics of like what verbs are and the basic thing you need to know about them in order to start working with them. Verbs are words that describe action. We know this. But if you're not quite sure and you're thinking in English, here's a quick English tip if you're a native English speaker to find out if a word is indeed a verb. Just add I want to in front of the word. If it sounds like a sentence, then it's probably a verb. If it sounds like a joke, then you may not have a verb on your hands. So let's start with run. Running. That sounds like, an action. I know what running is. So let's try putting our little, put it to the test. We'll add I want to in the front. I want to run. Makes sense to me. Explore. That sounds like a verb, you're exploring something. So I want to explore. Makes sense to me. Marriage. That's a thing that you do. I want to marriage. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, unfortunately. So let's go back to the drawing board. What you're thinking of is the verb marry. I want to marry. That's the one. So now that we can identify what verbs are, it's also important that I introduce you to a new technical term called infinitives. Infinitive verbs, or the infinitive form of a verb, it's literally just the whole form when you have to in front of it. To blank, to do, to be, to run, to want, to exercise, all the things when it says to verb. Easy to spot in English and in Spanish. So technically in English, infinitives are two words. To blank. Two words, dos. But I want you to think of them about like one thing, one infinitive. And that'll help you a lot for Spanish because in Spanish, spoiler alert, infinitives are just one word. Like English, they're also pretty easy to spot because they almost always end in one of these three endings, AR, ER, or IR. So if you see a word that has one of those three endings, it is probably a verb that you're looking at, like decir, or hablar, or ser, haber, It's pretty easy to identify if you just look at the last two letters of the word. But quick note, just a secret, not every single word that ends in one of those endings is an infinitive verb. I know that's annoying, but most of the time it is. Sometimes you have an outlier like hogar, which just means home, and that is not a verb, and it makes you think, oh, it's a verb, and it's not, and you think that it's a verb for like a lot of years. Okay, so you're like, why do I need to know all this technical stuff about infinitive verbs? Well, it's actually like the basic thing that you need to understand in order to start changing verbs. They change, surprisingly, when you have sentences. It's the first step to starting your own sentence construction in Spanish. So why am I being so technical?
What is that? Oh,
This is the beginning of those like complex verb changes that stress everyone out. And if you're like taking Spanish class or something, you might have already been exposed to that. And if you're stressed, take a breath. It's okay. If you haven't grasped the... So if you have not like fully understood or like grasped what infinitives are, that's okay. Sorry if I didn't explain it that well. Go Google it or something, and you can just pause the video and I'll just be right here when you get back. Okay, break time is over. So I have a metaphor that I hope will help you understand. And so come along on this journey of a metaphor with me, okay? For a second, think of infinitive verbs as like pure full loaves of bread, or like baguettes or something, right? Who doesn't love a baguette? Infinitives are like bread. They're simple and full, and like a loaf of bread, you can do a lot of things with them, cut it up, jazz it up, and turn it into a whole bunch of different things. If you cut up some slices, you can make some toast. If you add some icing to it, then you got a pastry, basically. Or you could just eat the whole dang thing on its own. I'm a fan of that. I've done that before. Infinitives are just like that when you're forming sentences, all right? You can put the whole thing in there if you want and just leave it. You can cut off the end and maybe that's a new word. You can cut the end off, add a new thing, or you can just keep the whole thing and add some stuff on top and make it a new thing. Because Spanish verbs do a lot of changing. They're very versatile. Okay, so even if like the bread metaphor thing doesn't make any sense, it doesn't matter. You're already a pro at doing these verb changes in English. For example, see with your eyes. I want to see. That's our test remember back in the beginning, how to test if something is a verb or not. To see is our infinitive. In English, you don't think about it, but you change it up all the time. It comes naturally as your first language, and it just gives context to sentences and helps you get your meaning across. For example, I want to see. That's a sentence, and we have our raw infinitive fully in there. I see them every year. Okay, well, we've dropped the to now, and it's I see, it's a little different, I suppose. When everyone sees this, they're gonna think that's crazy. Okay, we've dropped the to and we've added another S at the end. It's kind of just a different word at that point. I'm not seeing how this is gonna work, but I'll give it my best shot. The to is gone and we've just added on a bunch of letters at the end. Oh, those people, I saw them yesterday. Saw them. All that's left is the S from the original infinitive. You understand, right? Like, you don't really think about it in English, but you do it all the time. You change verbs into different forms that make sense. Because if you say, I see her yesterday, that doesn't make sense. People won't understand, I suppose. It's not grammatically correct anyways. Each time a verb changes, it just changes because of the context of the sentence and what you want the meaning to be. Learning Spanish as a second language just means you need to start being more conscious of what those changes are that you're making. And I personally think it's a lot easier to start learning Spanish verbs if you start thinking about how and when you do it in English. Because you're already a pro at English, you might as well start putting some of that expertise into your new language. If you pay attention to it enough, you start to learn how to do it naturally. So the whole process of changing verbs like that is called conjugation. That's the thing that stresses people out. And why do people get stressed out about it? Well, in English, there are a lot fewer conjugations for each verb. In Spanish, there's a lot more. Let's go back to our friend to see. If we use that example, to see is our infinitive. So if we want to conjugate the verb, here are just a few ways to conjugate the verb. I see, you see, she sees, we see, they see. It only changed once when we added sees in there. So that's why, people are like, oh, it's only a couple of different forms. The same progression, the translation of that whole thing in Spanish has 6 different words. So that's why people get stressed out. There's just a little bit more. It's just a little bit more exciting. Think about it that way, not in a complex way. But now that you have an idea of the foundations with infinitives and all that, hopefully you're better equipped to move forward into the vast world of Spanish conjugation. Good luck. And don't be too stressed out about it, okay? It's not that bad.